It's time for the Money Puzzle Podcast. With good conversations and realistic solutions to the money puzzles we all face every day. I'm your host, financial advisor, chartered financial consultant, and president of Edgen Insurance and Financial, Robert Edgen. Now let's get this show started. Hi there, hello, and welcome to the Money Puzzle Podcast. I am Robert Edgen, and I'll be your guide for the ride for the next few minutes. Each week, we look at a different piece of the money puzzle and practical ways to solve it so you can have the financial confidence you deserve and the future that you dream of. Now, this is episode number 20, and we are continuing on with our month-long look at long-term care and long-term care coverage. Everything and anything you could possibly want or need to know about long-term care, that's what we're tackling this month. Now, Brian and I were in studio last week, kind of with the intro to long-term care and some scary statistics and things that you should know about long-term care and long-term care coverage. This week, I've got Brian's wife, Erin, in the studio with me because she has some very personal, real-world experiences with long-term care. We're going to skip over the news and a lot of the early show chit-chat, get right into the heart of things with Erin Johnson, but make sure you come back and join us next week where we get into that 2 weeks straight of how do you protect yourself and how do you prepare for it. Until then, please enjoy this interview with Erin. I'm lucky enough to have Brian Johnson's better half, one of my favorite people in the Johnson family, probably the most favorite person, Erin, in the office with me today in the studio because we're talking about something very important that your family experienced, which really goes along well with our month of August shows all about long-term care because you were the primary caregiver for your mom for quite some time.
Yes.
Before she eventually, and you helped her transition into some different types of skilled homes and nursing homes and different things. So,
yes.
Erin has been kind enough to drive down from Denver so she can share her story with us, which first off, thank you so much for coming down and joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Can you just kind of tell us the backstory of Mom and how it happened that she started living with you and you became her caregiver?
Sure, yeah. So it was back in 2010. My dad had passed away, unfortunately, in December of 2010. And prior to his passing, all of us in the family had seen some changes in Mom where we were questioning, she's not remembering things that she should be, or kind of a broken record sort of in conversations where there would be a repeat of the same thing she had just said. And so there were little red flags, and even my dad had pulled me aside a couple times and said, something's not quite right. Unfortunately, nothing had been diagnosed at that time. Dad passed away in December. She had a stroke right about that same time.
Okay.
And it was not a stroke that you think of where it affects half of her face or anything like that. It was just a stroke where it just totally changed her functioning. In fact, while I was there helping her out with kind of the businessy side of my dad's passing, I saw dramatic changes in her. And finally, we had her checked out, and it confirmed, MRI confirmed that she did, in fact, have a stroke.
Okay, so you didn't even know. You could just tell. You couldn't see it. You could just tell from her actions.
Exactly, yep.
So was it then decided that, because she lived in Michigan, correct?
Yep. So I was back in Michigan with her when I started seeing all of this and a drastic change in her functioning. So
was it then decided, hey, Mom, come on out, stay with us?
Well, so I started talking to family members and saying, I'm like, I needed to go back to my family. I had been gone for, I think it had been 7 weeks at the time. And I was getting scared. I was like, I can't leave her alone. For one thing, she was a diabetic, and I heard her up and, doing her normal morning routine, and she had given herself her insulin. And then like 10 minutes later, I heard her doing the same things to give herself insulin again. And I was like, Mom, what are you doing? And so she was like, well, I was going to give myself my shot. And I said, you just did that. Right. I did, So these are, very scary things. So I started contacting family members and saying, I don't think I can leave her. And I actually, there were family members that were like, oh, Erin, you're just, you need to let her, she's grieving. You need to give her some space. And I said, okay, if you don't believe me, come out and stay with her. And so there were a few family members that did, because I was saying, I can't leave her. And if no one's here to be with her, she's going to have to come back to Colorado with me.
Right.
I couldn't, in my right mind, leave her. And so a couple of family members did, and they were like, wow, what has happened to her? They saw it too. And then I think that was in the midst of getting the MRI and then seeing, okay, there's actually a physical reason why she has changed. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So after they experienced that, it was, okay, mom needs some help.
Right.
So you brought mom out to live with you and your family here in Colorado.
Yes.
Now, something I know about your family is you have a bunch of amazingly wonderful kids.
Yeah.
But tell us, how at the time you had how many children?
So I have 4 kids. Mm-hmm. So my youngest was 2. And then I had 4, 6, and 7, almost 8.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you now have you've got 4 kids.
4 kids.
And
that I homeschool.
You homeschool.
Yes.
That's right.
Yep.
And you've got the, a great track record of making those kids awfully smart, I will say.
Working on it.
So, yep, they're doing a good job. And then now you have the added duties of taking care of mom at the same time.
Yes.
Right.
Insanity.
And that's right. Now, how long did that go on? How long did mom live with you, and how long were you a caregiver during that time?
For 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did things change over those 3 years?
So during those 3 years, mom's Alzheimer's continued to progress. So when she had her stroke, ultimately she did get the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and this is important in context to long-term care insurance, which we can talk about in a minute. But so she had the diagnosis, and it is a gradual, it's the slow goodbye, which is what Nancy Reagan described it. It's the slow goodbye.
Yeah. So she was diagnosed while she was living with you, and at that point in time, then there was some assistance from some long-term care. But let's back up, because you had told me something before about your folks' long-term care. They actually told you a long, long time ago about their long-term care. Can you share that with me?
So I remember, I know I was in early high school, and my mom and dad came home one day and they said, well, now we've got it all set up, so you'll be financially okay if and when you need to take care of us. And I was like, huh? I think I might have been a sophomore in high school. And they kind of joked about it, but it was in all seriousness. And so, I remember where I was, I remember the whole situation there thinking, wow, they're going to need me to take care of them someday. Whoa. That actually came back to me as I was trying to navigate this road of, okay, how to get mom's long-term care insurance going and, how that all works.
So she had the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, which definitely would trigger her long-term care insurance.
Yes. How
did that help you care for your mom?
Basically, get that insurance engaged.
Okay.
You can miss the chance to get it going. So I was thankful we had a friend who also sells long-term care insurance, and he said, make sure you now submit those records, that diagnosis, to her long-term care insurance company, so that you can get funding started. Right. Or a claim, I guess, going.
Right, get a claim going. So in the long-term care insurance, it did not, they didn't, send folks out, because you had decided you were going to take that care on yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But what it did help you do was kind of, keep supporting the family unit, because now care that would have had to, come out of pocket or come out of, mom's income or assets, she was getting assistance from long-term care insurance, which was paying you to provide her care.
And what I believe for myself, what was so huge in that time was the fact that, first of all, my parents had the forethought to set all this up. And then what rang through clearly to me is their wishes. So, because it's a hard thing when you're taking on the care of a parent to navigate how do you use the resources. Are those resources that need to go directly to her, or are they resources that are essentially to pay me to take care of her? And they set it up so that I could be paid to take care of her. It wasn't, it removed guilt, which is a huge thing.
Well, and they said to you way back in high school, yes, now you don't have to worry when you take care of us. If and when you take care of us, then you'll be provided for to do that.
I was really clear on what their wishes were. And that, to me, made a huge difference, because at the time when I was having to make these decisions, I couldn't go to her for, okay, what is your opinion? Because, if I'd asked her, she had said, well, I'm fine. I'm just going to stay home and I don't need your care.
Right.
She didn't understand.
She didn't recognize it.
Right. She was not aware. So
now, how were the family dynamics of having mom in the house, with 4 young kids, and a husband? Now you've got everybody to take care of, right?
Yes. Yeah. So essentially what happens, at first, at least for myself, I was on go mode. Like, I can do this. I've got this. And I needed to prove it to everyone that I've got this. I can take care of mom. I can take care of kids. I can be the best mom. I can homeschool, blah, blah, blah. And what happens is you hit a wall where you implode or explode, one of those things, and you realize you can't do it all.
Right.
That you need some help. You basically need days off. And so that's where I was able to allocate some of those funds to have a day off.
Because before then you were 24/7, 365.
24/7, yep, that was it. And there's a lot, as a mom, when you have little ones, you're used to getting up in the middle of the night. What you're not used to is, having to possibly change your depends in the middle of the night, which is a much more, it's a bigger deal than a small child. Right. It's just, everything's bigger because you're dealing with an adult.
So because your folks had that forethought, you knew what their wishes were, but now you're able to add a little bit of the, the personal family stuff back in by using some of those resources from the care to bring in some outside help from time to time as needed.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So like essentially respite care, where I could, I did, have to call a number of different resources and just find where I could have someone come in. It was somebody that I could interview and get to know. Ultimately, there were some times when they would babysit my kids and take care of my mom, which I thought was a huge blessing because you do need a break. Right. We all need it.
We all need a break. That's right. That's why we all don't work 24/7, 365.
That's exactly right.
So mom was with you for 3 years. Kind of tell me, how did you know that it was time to start considering some alternatives to having mom stay with you, ongoing?
Well, one of the things kind of throughout this process is making those decisions are some of the hardest things. And so I talked to the Lord and I said, I prayed to Jesus. I said, please make it clear. I don't want it to be because I've had a hard day, because there were hard days and there were days where I'm like, I can't do this. I don't want to do it. And sometimes I was grumpy or impatient with my mom. I didn't like that. It wasn't the same relationship that we had when we were very close as growing up. And when you're in that care provider position, your relationship with your loved one changes. You don't want it to. You became this caregiver as opposed to, hey, I just want to be your daughter. I just want to sit down and have a conversation with you.
Sure.
And so that's very hard. That's a hard place to be, or a hard role to transition into. And so ultimately what did happen is my mom had a fall in her bedroom. It was kind of very she kind of slipped off of her bed onto, her hands and knees. Well, anyways, in that very small fall, she fractured her sacrum. And so we didn't know that at the time. And, I got her into bed and the next morning it was worse. And I was, oh my gosh, what's going on? Anyways, long story short, we figured out, okay, that's what's happened. She had x-rays. So in that process, what had happened, because she didn't understand the pain, and I don't know all the reasoning for this, but it would throw her into muscle spasms whenever she would try to stand up. And I think it was her body just not understanding what's going on. And of course, a fractured sacrum is a non-surgical situation. You just have to let it heal. Well, in that, so they said, well, we think she needs to go from hospital care. So I think she was there for 48 hours maybe, to if you can't take her at home, which I couldn't at the time because she couldn't even stand up.
Sure.
And so they said, well, we'll need to transition her to rehab. And I said, well, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so she went to rehab. She was there for, I think, a week when they said, she's no longer making gains in our program. And so you need to come and get her.
Yeah, which is a part of the Medicare process.
Exactly.
You have to be making gains to stay. That's
right. Exactly. And so I was like, get her. What do you, I mean, these muscle spasms, they were so she would almost fall out of her wheelchair with these spasms, and it had to do with the pain that was affected. And so it was a really crazy, I'm like, I can't take care of her. I don't know how to do this.
Right.
Like, I am going to drop her or hurt her just trying to help her in the bathroom or something like that. And I'm not set up for that. Our house wasn't at all like a handicap accessible situation. So that's when they were like, well, you're either going to have to take her home or put her into a nursing home. And I was like, are you kidding? It felt very much like good luck.
And it was kind of not only a forced decision, but kind of an immediate.
Oh, yeah.
You have to figure this out right now.
I had less than 48 hours to figure out where my mom needed to live.
So she was in rehab, you said, for about a week.
Yep.
You then transitioned from there into what?
From there I started a panic search of where am I going to put my mom that's going to be safe, a nice place for her, all of this. So I just went on this frantic search. First, you start to look at the state homes, which are very scary. Ultimately, I did, through the help of an agency helping me find good situations for her, and I had a price range that I was talking to them about. We found an assisted living home for her.
And fortunately, again, your mom had some long-term care insurance.
Yes.
So when you were looking around for facilities, you didn't have to rely on the state homes.
Nope.
Because you were going to have some assistance in covering those costs for her care.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So did that allow you to pick a place that you were comfortable with that thought would be good for mom?
Absolutely. I was able, and that's where I was able to talk with the person helping us find a home and say, okay, this is the funds that we have available. What can we find in that range? And thankfully, she was able to find something that was very nice as an assisted living situation in our price range.
So, okay.
In my mom's price range.
So within 48 hours, now you've transitioned mom to this is a skilled nursing home then at this point?
That first placement was a skilled nursing home. Okay. Ultimately, she did transition from there into an assisted living home. Okay.
More focused on Alzheimer's?
Actually, so there was a couple of steps to it because it was a brand new home. They're set up as houses. And so it was a brand new home. It was just assisted living. And they had an Alzheimer's unit that was it was still under construction. So it wasn't quite open yet. And so they were she was able to stay in this one home for a period of time. And then they said, okay, now we have our Alzheimer's unit open and she would be more appropriate in this setting.
So in addition to, that assistance that you were getting from her policy and they were helping with those costs, were there other ongoing out-of-pocket costs or expenses that you guys had to keep dealing with?
Yeah. So towards the end of her time in the assisted living, Alzheimer's unit assisted living home, she did at one point qualify. I think it started out as palliative care, which is the precursor to hospice care.
Okay.
And so, and through hospice, there is funding there. And so that was very helpful. And she was able to get a hospital bed, things that, you just don't know if you've never done it. As she was transitioning into basically towards the end. Mm-hmm. Now, those were things that were funded through hospice. So it was great. However, there became a point when the assisted living home said, she is no longer appropriate for our environment. And because basically she was bedridden at that point, and they did have a hospice nurse coming in, but it was more involved care than what they were having for the rest of their clients. So I eventually understood this. I was like, wow, because I was sort of in my mind thinking, okay, this is her final place.
Right.
However, her needs, increase, and that's just the tough reality of when you're done on this road. So anyways, she was able to transition out of their assisted living home back into a skilled nursing home. And I thought, okay, this, she'll just be there. Well, suddenly it sort of removed her need for hospice. It was this weird like gap in services that I was not anticipating. So she went into the assisted or the skilled nursing care. Well, at that point, she was no longer receiving hospice services. So then her hospital bed was no longer funded. So suddenly you have to try and figure out how you're going to...
How to get a hospital bed.
Hospital bed, yeah. And so they helped with that, which was good. But then it's like, oh, now there's this added cost. Oh, and by the way, now, this particular doctor is not in her care, covered in her insurance or an in-network doctor. So now there's that additional expense. And, oh, you can use our Glucerna. She needs Glucerna. But if you use ours, it's going to be 3, 4, 5 times the cost of getting the Glucerna. So we're like, we'll get it. We'll go to the store. And then there's the cost of the Depends. Once eventually hospice care did kick in again for her in the skilled nursing, it just took a little while for there's these strange little gaps that are sort of unexpected, but can be very costly in the process as you're going through it.
Yeah. So in the end, your mom passed away eventually. But you were able to kind of spend some different kind of time with her than you probably would have or were ahead of time. So do you think that the transition process of moving her into the care facility was better or worse for you?
I think it was, my heart broke for her because I could tell, that first transition, moving her from my care, I could tell that she was lucid and, she just wanted to go back home with me.
Right.
And that is such a hard thing to explain, why you can't continue to care in the way you had been. And she took it well. It's a terrible thing, but she did. I could see she was hurt. And it was hard to explain it to her. But I think on some level, we both knew it needed to happen. I knew that I was there. And so the Lord made that really clear to me, which I'd asked for, because I didn't have it within me to handle everything that she needed at that point.
Right.
Safely.
Safe for mom and safe for you.
Safe for mom, safe for me. It was, the home, it was not set up in a way that would be safe for her.
Right.
So
I know no matter how things play out, it's all difficult situations, trying to figure out, when is the right time? How do we do it? I knew you when all that was going on and got to kind of, hear the stories and experience it. And I know that you took such great care of her. So throughout that whole time, are there maybe some kind of life lessons or things like, hey, these are things now that I've learned that I want to make sure, that works this way for my children.
Right.
So any words of wisdom you would impart?
Well, first of all, I think it's so huge to know what your parents' wishes are. Find that out now. If have that conversation, those are hard conversations to have, but it made such a huge difference for me to know what their wishes were. I had to start making healthcare decisions, just care decisions, all of that for my mom. It was sort of thrust upon me, and to know that I was doing things based on what she and my father wanted for her. And that made all the difference in the world to me, as opposed to just striking it out there and saying, okay, am I doing this for me or am I doing this for her? And so it made complete difference for that. And then just to also, the fact that they had that forethought to get the long-term care insurance was such a huge blessing. And to know that they wanted me to help out if I was able and willing to take care of my mom. They wanted to be able to provide some financial means for me to be able to do that. Some sort of a pay for my service, if you will.
Sure,
it sounds awful, but reality is it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job.
Yeah, and there are these extra costs that come into play. There's also the part of you had gone to college and gotten a degree, and so now we're using our time and our expertise and other things compared to bringing an income in for the family. Right. So what they did allowed you to be able to provide some care, stay at home, do those things, but not affect the family in a negative financial way.
Exactly. And my parents, they didn't want it to break us. They never wanted they wanted for me to help where I could, but not for it to financially break me. That was not ever their wish.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing a lot of personal information with us. I know it will be very helpful to everyone who watches. And again, from the outside looking in, I know you did an amazing job. Brian, you said keep us filled in on what was going on with the family, but I know you took very wonderful care for her of her. So, thank you for that, and thank you for spending that time with us. I think that'll wrap it up.
Okay, thank you.
Registered representative of and securities offered through Securities Management and Research, Inc., SM&R. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through BFC Planning, Inc. Edgen Insurance and Financial Services, Johnson Financial Services, SM&R, American National Family of Companies, and BFC Planning are independent entities. There are risks involved with investing which may include market fluctuation and possible loss of principal value. Particular investments may not be suitable for certain situations. Carefully consider the risks and possible consequences involved prior to making an investment decision. Our firm does not provide legal or tax advice. Be sure to consult with your own legal and tax advisors before taking any action that may have tax implications.